Hello, everybody from GA. Good to be talking to you again, even though it's not in person. Bradley Barnes did ask me to do just a short reflection here on Holy Thursday. And of course, there's a million things we could talk about today. A very beautiful day, a day that really leads us to a lot of reflection, especially on the Eucharist, on the priesthood, on the commandment to love. But specifically, I want to look at just one detail, which is the detail when Jesus goes to wash Peter's feet, because I think it encapsulates a couple of things for us about service. Certainly, and this is a point that we tend to draw out, that Christ humbled himself. He himself being God, humbled himself entirely to serve us and to give himself to us. And so we as Christians are meant to give of ourselves to others, even when they're ungrateful, even when the task seems to be one that we shouldn't have to do ourselves, or that it's somebody else's job to do. That we are willing to do that because God has done that for us. God has shown his great mercy for us, and we want to imitate in some small way in our lives that extreme love which God has shown for us. One of the ways we do that is by serving regardless of all of the human considerations which might seem to say you don't have to serve in that way, or you shouldn't serve in that way. No, we as Christians are willing to serve following that humble and loving example of Christ. Second of all, I want to look at St. Peter's response to that. Peter replies, "You will never wash my feet," right? And that seems at first to come from a position of humility, and in a sense it does, because he recognizes his place beneath Christ. And yet he forgets his place under Christ as learner, right? And Christ as teacher. He forgets this, and that Jesus ultimately what he's doing is teaching the apostles, teaching them how to serve each other and others. And so he forgets this, and he takes on himself kind of a position of authority to say what ought to be done and what oughtn't to be done. Rather, he should have been receptive to that charity, to that service that Christ gives to him. And this ties into our own experience in that we can be like Peter sometimes as well. And what do I mean by this? Well, just to give an illustration of this, I was out on a walk a few days ago, and it was a beautiful day outside, probably about 60 degrees, sunny. And as I'm walking, a sudden wind picks up, and suddenly it's 15 degrees colder, and it begins to pour down rain. I mean, I don't know where the clouds came from. But so I'm in my cassock, I'm completely drenched. Just walking back towards the church, I'm still probably 5 minutes away. And somebody driving by slows down and says, "Hey, Father, you need a ride?" And I thinking, well, look, at this point I'm already drenched. I don't want to get that person's car wet. I'm gonna refuse kind of this act of charity. And part of me also kind of assumed that they only did that out of a sense of obligation because they happened to be passing by me and they didn't want to be seen passing by without stopping and asking if I needed a ride, right? So part of this was me just assuming kind of a cynical position, right? So I tell them, well, look, at this point, I'll just walk back. So I refuse that service that he offered me. And I start walking back, and I look back and I realize he makes a U-turn. So he had seen me from his house and decided to get in his car and drive to me just to offer me that ride. Here I was assuming that he happened to be passing by and just wanted to seem kind by offering me a ride, when in reality he had gone out of his way to offer me a service, which I then refused, right? And I refused out of pride. So this is one of the many ways that we, like Peter, can refuse to be served by others. And it's something that, I think it's part of our culture, in a sense, a kind of pride in our culture that says, no, I'm going to do things myself. This is a mess I got in. I'm going to take care of it myself, or whatever the case may be. But as Christians, part of this openness to service needs to be our willingness to serve others, yes, but also our willingness to receive the loving service of others. And so, especially in a time like this, first of all, let's serve others, but then also let's be willing to receive that loving service which others might seek to give us, even in the smallest of ways, right? To be open to that and to encourage a sense of fraternal charity among ourselves in this way, both in giving and in joyfully receiving.